Well, we'll first start with the story of how I got so obsessed with this. So I'm going to take you back to 2007, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I belonged to a social community called Hike the Geek. And it was just a group of smart people, or who said they were smart, and we went hiking every Sunday, and then after the hikes on Sunday, we would go to somebody's house or to a restaurant, and we would just hang out for the rest of the day. And this was at a friend's house in Los Angeles. Everybody has pools, of course. And the guy sitting at the top with the blue shirt, he's a famous physicist. That's Garrett Lissy. And the guy hanging over the edge was a top dog at Microsoft. And but the guy he's got his back turned on the left here, but he was working on a really interesting startup idea. And he was building an online project management tool, which is kind of interesting. It was interesting in 2007. But it was the reason that he was building this tool that was so interesting, which was he didn't want to die. And he was frustrated that the longevity scientists that were working on solving the problem of aging were located all over the world, and they weren't talking, and they weren't sharing data. So he thought, okay, I'm going to build this online project management tool to get these people talking so that they can finally solve the problem of aging, because I'm getting older, and I don't want to die. And that was really real. That's why he was building the tool. And for me, I was like, whoa, think of the things that we could do if we got the right people working together, regardless of location. Man, and down the rabbit hole I went, and life has never been the same. And for the last 3 years, I've been interviewing people in companies who are working remotely, and to figure out, how are they doing it, and what are they doing? And I started because I was writing a book about it, and it's almost done. People have been asking me for years now. It's almost done. It's coming out soon. But I wanted to share some of those stories with you today, and then to give you some tips about what I learned from all of these interviews. So fast forward 10 years, and more and more and more, work is something that we do. It's not a place that we go. And technology is making the whole 9-to-5 job unnecessary, more and more. And also, because of this, the whole 9-to-5 going into the office every day is becoming less attractive to people all over the world too, especially the younger generations. People want more work-life freedom, and they want the ability to work on the projects they care about the most and with the people that they care about the most also. And it's easier and easier to do this, and I think this is a really interesting time. This is just a handful of sites where people can go and find work that's completely remote. And I think it's kind of a scary time for businesses as well, because those of us who are super passionate and motivated and driven and care about the work that we do, these are the people that we want to have as employees, and we want to hire them. And now we can just go, if we don't like our jobs, we can simply find something else. And maybe you don't make as much money, but freedom is also a currency, and we're finding that more as well. People are willing to work for less money if they have freedom in their lives. I want to give you an example of this. I'm going to tell you the story of Jeffrey Hesse. He is an agile coach at Sonatype. He's the guy on the right-hand side. And Sonatype works with a team of about 40 distributed people from all over the world. And one thing that you'll notice when you meet Jeffrey is that he loves his job. He loves what he does. He loves the people he works with. He loves the work that he does. He also loves photography. He loves mountain climbing. This is him on a glacier expedition that he does every summer. And he really loves his grandmother, she lives in Alaska, he lives in Washington, D.C. They have a really close relationship, and he loves spending time together with her. So what he's done is, he's combined his passions with work and photography and climbing and spending time with his grandmother by traveling and working on the road. And he did an experiment at Sonatype where he went on the road for 1 month, and he didn't tell his colleagues he was going on the road. He went to Argentina, and he wanted to see, could he travel and be productive, and would his colleagues notice that he was gone? So the goal was, at the end of the month, that nobody would know that he had been on the road. Now, admittedly, it was really hard. It was not easy. Internet connection in Argentina is not great. It was really hard to find. He tried all kinds of things, like co-working spaces, friends' houses, His technical know-how really came in handy because he had to set up all kinds of VoIP phones and things, and he was rigging things all over the place. But in the end, he was successful. And when he went back to the team meeting 1 month later, everybody's like, "Oh, you were on the road? We had no idea." So he made it work. This is Pierre Tobin. He's an Italian developer who spent a year, almost 2 years on the road in the US, traveling around the US in a camper van with his wife, coding while paying for his expenses. Now I know this is, compared to the typical 9-to-5 job, this is radically unconventional and very hard to do, but it does give us a glimpse into what's possible and what's becoming increasingly common. So I'm going to tell you some stories about businesses, but first I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be present today in the modern age. Before we went into the office and we were present, we were there, but that has changed. And I know how many people have spider phones, those old conference phones in their offices. You know, you stand over, "Hey Bob, it's Lisette, can you hear me?" How many people still have those or have used those? Okay. Yeah, we don't need that anymore. We have info presence, for example. So we can actually simulate what it's like to sit across the table from each other. So this is kind of expensive software, but I'll go a little bit more down to earth and show you. This, for instance, is my favorite video conferencing tool. It's called Zoom. You can have up to 50 people on a video call at the same time. So we at our team, we are constantly, you just click a link and you're connected. I've used Cisco Link, and I would try Zoom, just try it, and then you'll never go back to Link. So it's a great way to do it. You can actually see each other. When you can see each other, you know when somebody's tired, you know if somebody wants to speak. You can do all kinds of things. So Zoom is one example. There's, of course, Hangouts and Squiggle. And this, what happens here is people can actually simulate what it's like to work in a room together. There's a team at Spotify who has developers in New York and in Stockholm and in Italy. And they basically keep a Hangout open all day, and they keep it on mute. When somebody wants to talk, they unmute themselves, they talk, and then they go back onto mute and keep working. Squiggle is another tool. It's a little less interruptive than Hangouts because the Hangouts video is streaming all the time. But with Squiggle, it just takes a picture, so it's a little bit easier. But you can actually work together as if you're pair collaborating, for example, or pair programming, but you can do that in a group. I'm going to start to go a little bit far out, but I can't help myself. So we'll go one step further out into the weirdness, and this is actually a virtual office. This is called Sukoko. What you're looking at is you're looking down into an office. Each one of these squares represents a room, and those circles represents people in rooms. So there's 4 of us on the top, and we're in the very bottom here in the lounge area. We're all sharing pictures of our cats and talking. You can only hear the people and see the people that are in the room with you, but you can see where they are in the office. A very powerful tool for working together. And I, for one, I am a big fan of telepresence, for example, and the robots. What you see here on the left, this is the Kubi, and this is what I have here. And then we can play with it afterwards, but I think it'll be too interruptive if I try to do a demo. But basically what this allows me to do is beam in and then move myself from side to side or up and down to shake my head yes. So if I'm, for instance, in a meeting with a whole bunch of other people, I'm the only remote participant, I can actually move myself to see who's talking, to see the whiteboard, and that's handy for the remote person. But what's extremely exciting about it is, for the people in the room, this gives you actually presence in the room. The movement is surprisingly important because all of a sudden you become a little bit more personified because you can move. People really underestimate how much the movement matters. The one that you're seeing here on the right is the Beam Pro. This is a drivable robot that you drive using the arrow keys of your keyboard. And on the left side is my friend Kristen, who lives in Canada, and I'm on the right side, beaming in from the Netherlands, and we're attending a conference in Las Vegas together. So we beamed in, drove around, visited the booths, went to talks, talked to people, had virtual tea together, all from the cupboards of our own living rooms. Really cool. Some ways that these technologies are being used today in schools for kids who are sick and can't attend class, they can actually still attend class and be social. There was a kid who actually went to the prom via robot because he couldn't go to the prom, so he drove his robot. Museums, more and more. In Lyon, the museum in Lyon, you can actually tour it by beaming in. And of course, doctors. So if you need a specialist and they're too far away. This is sort of where some of this technology originally developed. The Kubi was developed in the medical field. But for remote workers, what this allows us to do is to be in two places at once. So if you're at home sick with your kids, your Kubi can be in your office, and people can still come into your office and talk to you as if you were there, but you're actually at home with your sick kids. So I know it seems a little bit far out, but I'd like to just give an example of what's possible and what's becoming increasingly possible. And the idea of what it means to be present is really changing. So we're not yet at the time where we can beam in and holograms, and we're not there yet, but it's not that far away, actually. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how this is changing businesses and some of the different business models that are coming out of this. And I'd like to start with my very favorite company, which is one that I work for. It's called HappyMelly. And this HappyMelly is essentially a global network of entrepreneurs whose purpose, we share the same common purpose of making people happier at work. My company is Collaboration Superpowers. That's one company in the HappyMelly umbrella. Jürgen Appelow's Management 3.0 is another company part of the HappyMelly umbrella. And we basically help each other globalize and scale good business ideas that help people to be happier in their jobs. Now, I joined the network because I was looking to get business advice for how do I scale my company globally. And while I care about profits, I also care about how I make those profits. And I wanted to scale my company in a way with people and get business advice from people that had the same values that I did. And so in 1 year, I have a Work Together Anywhere workshop that I give. And in 1 year, I have now 6 licensed facilitators who are giving this workshop all over the world in 13 countries speaking 5 different languages. And this kind of thing would never before have been possible 10 years ago, would not have been possible. Now, some other interesting companies. This is Starter Squad. This is a really interesting story. So this was a group of freelancers that were brought together by a client. And over time, they just enjoyed working together so much, the team really clicked. And at one point, the client ran out of money, but the team thought, we don't want to stop working together, this is really good. And they didn't know each other, they were all working remotely. So they decided, well, our only problem is we don't have a client. So what they did is everybody went out and got work and brought it back to the group. And years later, I think it's been 4 or 5 years since they started, they now operate as a group of entrepreneurs. There's no management structure, there's no hierarchy. They voted Evine here on the right, they voted in as their CEO. They could also vote him out again. But they operate in this way where they all go out and bring work back to the company. There's no contracts, it's, this is the way they operate. I'm going to go a little bit extreme again. This is one of my favorite stories. This is Team Taio, run by Yegor Bugayenko, and he has a group of about 200 freelancers who have never met, they've never spoken. He doesn't actually even know their names, he just knows their email addresses. And they have no meetings, no Skype calls, no video calls, nothing. They operate completely through a ticketing system. Tasks or projects are built by taking people that have specific skills that are needed for that project. And then tasks are broken down into micro tasks, and programmers are paid as they complete the tasks, and they're not paid if they don't complete the tasks. And when the project is over, everybody is dissolved, and then they reform for a new project, depending on the skill set that's needed for the project. And it operates very successfully this way. Very extreme. When I asked him, what about team building? What do you do with team building? Every team always asks. He goes, I do not believe in this team building. Client does not want to pay for team building. He's completely results oriented. If you finish the task, you get paid. If you don't finish the task, he gives it to the next developer. So a bit extreme, but again, it shows us what's possible. Now, one more story, because I just interviewed them this week, and I'm so excited to have heard this story. This is a company or a group called R-Loop. They met last year on Reddit when somebody posted on the SpaceX forum. I'm assuming it's a developers conference, so everybody knows what Reddit is. Okay. But they met, so somebody posted on a forum in Reddit, hey, let's work on a submission for the Hyperloop competition for SpaceX. 1 year later, it's 400 people, voluntary, all over the world, and it started with 1,800 submissions, and they're now down to the final 30 teams. And these guys are one of those teams. Not even possible at all 10 years ago. Some of them have never met, and they've been working on this for the last year. And I think, man, in California, and the Hyperloop is what you're seeing here. Basically, you can get from Los Angeles to San Francisco in 30 minutes using this transportation system. Now, having lived in California, they've been working on some sort of transportation system from Los Angeles to San Francisco for, 30 years. And in 1 year, this team has come up with a viable option for doing it, faster and cheaper than ever before. And I think that's pretty incredible. Okay, so a lot has happened in the last 5 years in terms of technology and what's possible. So what I encourage is for people to take another look at the technology that's available and what's out there. So just, if you're used to the old spider phone, which I've done before, and you think, oh, this is horrible and you can never work like this, a lot has happened. So definitely take another look. And let's go into how do we leverage remote working, and how do businesses and remote capabilities how do we take advantage of this? And I'll start first by saying, well, a lot of companies need to work remotely. I'm sure, that you can't find the right talent in the place, like this longevity guy. They weren't all living in Los Angeles. They're all over the world. And he couldn't have found them and brought them to Los Angeles if he had wanted to. Sometimes you need to grow the company and there's just not enough people. I interviewed FormStack and they did this. They just couldn't find enough people in Indianapolis, so they had to go elsewhere. And that happens a lot. And then, of course, cost. A developer in San Francisco costs significantly more than a developer in Vietnam. And that is something that businesses can't ignore. And of course, a lot of people have been limited by location for a long time. And I think it's pretty exciting that at this point, like military spouses, they're moving around constantly. They couldn't get a job before because they're going to be moving in 6 months or they don't know. So it's really hard to get a job. Or stay-at-home parents, for example, retired people and disabled people. So there was this retired guy that I heard about who loved working, but he just couldn't move very well. So they installed a robot at this construction store in his, I don't even think it was in his town, it was somewhere, but he installed a robot and he would help people like select the wood that they needed and the tools that they needed from home via the robot. I mean, he didn't want to stop working, so it was just like a hobby for him so he could continue. And of course, companies want to offer flexible working as a benefit, because who wants to sit in traffic all day? And I've done this before. Lots of people commute hours and hours every day, and you probably want to spend that time with your family. So actually, it's becoming more and more compelling for businesses to offer this. And as I'm learning with HappyMelly, and through all of my interviews, that work-life freedom contributes to employee happiness. I think my next slide, So when people can choose where they want to work, then it really does make you happy. Like for instance, I'm hypersensitive, so I get overstimulated by all the things going on around me, and for me to get work done, I have to be sort of in a quiet space by myself. Other people really like to be around the hustle and bustle and have people around them. That's where they do their best work. And when we all work in the same place, you kind of everybody has to be dumbed down to the median level of the work that's there. Some people would really thrive in this environment and some people wouldn't, but we all have to work there. So when you let people work where they're most productive, you can actually get a lot more productivity out of people, as well as happiness. And, a very compelling reason for going remote, or whether or not you go remote, is to have the processes in place so that if you had to go remote, that you could. For instance, if there's bad weather or a transportation strike or the kids are sick, whatever the reason, work shouldn't have to stop because you can't get to the office. So whether or not you go remote, if you have those processes in place, everybody wants to have the smooth communication, being aligned, files in one place. If you have that all in place, your business will be better off. Okay, so now we'll finally get to the secrets of success. And we'll get to the secrets of success. So this is not all of them, but I think these were some of the top ones that I picked out. The first is, you need good internet and good equipment or you're doomed. So it's as simple as that. If you don't have a good internet connection, it's just going to be all pain all the time. So if you don't have a good internet connection, don't bother trying. And when I say good equipment, I don't mean gold-plated laptops and super fancy stuff. I'm talking very simple. You need a fast internet connection, noise-canceling headsets, and a webcam. That's just the very basics. If you have that, if you can start there, you can go a long way. Now, a lot of people say, webcam? I don't really need a webcam to work remote. And it's true, you don't need a webcam, but I'm saying another secret to success is turn the video cameras on. Absolutely turn the video cameras on. I forgot to mention when I talked about Zoom before that it uses less bandwidth than any of the other tools out there. So less bandwidth than Skype. I get no money from Zoom, I'll say. I'm just a slavish fangirl. But it uses less bandwidth than all the other tools. So in places where video previously wasn't possible, Zoom actually works. But when you turn the video on, you start to build the sense of team. And unless you're working on Yegor's team, then most people care about that feeling that you have with your colleagues. You want that camaraderie and you want that sense of team. So turn the videos on. You learn a lot about people. Their background says a lot. What do they have in their background? Do they have books? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? All of a sudden you're connecting on a personal level in ways that you couldn't do before. And there's a big shift that needs to happen with remote working, which is becoming results-oriented over time-oriented. So if it took you 2 hours or 20 hours to write that marketing report, it doesn't matter. What matters is, did the marketing report get written on time? And is it a good quality report? So it doesn't matter. So when we become results-oriented, then it's a huge shift, but it really matters with remote working. Now this is a whole topic and workshop and everything in and of itself. And the picture that I'm showing here is an episode from the Future of Work podcast by Jacob Morgan. And this episode, number 46 in particular, tells the experience of what the Gap did, the company of the Gap, when they went results-oriented. So they allowed their employees to choose where and when they were going to work, and they had to come up with their own goals and objectives to do it. And he tells the story of the process they went through in order to make that happen. Super good podcast. I've listened to it like 10 times. I can't stop. Now, another concept, or another secret to success, is working out loud. And actually, Dave, this morning when you said check in 4 times with your client every day, that's a way of working out loud. So what it means is just make your work observable to others in a way that's useful. So it's not about spamming people all the time with what you're doing, because then the best marketer wins, of course. But it's a matter of letting people know what you're working on and what you need from the team and where your roadblocks are. So there's many ways of working out loud. The daily stand-up is one way of working out loud, for example. Instant messaging systems are a way of working out loud. I worked with a woman in California, and she was first-line support and I was second-line support. So for her, it really mattered if I was at my computer or not, because she would treat the customer differently based on where I was. So if I went out for a 15-minute walk, I always posted on my IM status, I'm out for 15 minutes, I'll be right back. So then she would know, do I tell a customer you'll be back later, or can she just pass them on to me directly? That's a way of working out loud. John Stepper wrote a book about it. He works for Deutsche Bank, and he actually wrote the book about it because they were downsizing his department. And he realized that nobody knew what he did, and he was going to get fired. So he had to find a way of letting people know what he was working on. So this is where the whole working out loud concept started for him. So another secret to success, I would say, is be deliberate about your team building. You'll never accidentally bump into somebody on Skype. So like you would at the water cooler, you're just not gonna accidentally call. I mean, not usually anyway. So with remote working, you have to be deliberate about how you build your team and about making that time for team building exercises. This is a virtual dance party that the HappyMelly team had once. Jennifer DJ down the right, and the rest of us just got up and boogied for a few minutes. It was fun. But what we do is, I have the little kitten to remind me, like, okay, remind me. So what we have is every week we have a meeting on Thursdays at 6 called Kitten Talk. And I'll tell you why we called it Kitten Talk. But what it is just 30 minutes every week, and the team gets together. If they're available, it's not obligatory. Whoever's around can get together, and for 30 minutes we just hang out and talk. Not about work, that's the only rule, no work talk. We might play a game, but we just hang out. We have lunch, we do whatever. So, and we called it Kitten Talk because there was an accountant, she was very strict, and like a German accountant who was like every penny, everything was black and white, very strict. We were all a bit afraid of her. And one day I came on early, I was there 10 minutes early, and I said, okay, well, if anybody wants to just come hang out, I'm just looking at pictures of kittens. I mean, in a second, she was online like, kittens? Did somebody say kittens? And I thought, yes, I found the way to her heart. Like, yes. So then we called it Kitten Talk, so now Kitten Talk. But you really have to be deliberate about your team building, because if you're not deliberate, it won't happen. And when you're remote, you can start to drift further and further and further apart. You need those touch points, and it has to be something that's not work related, because otherwise you just get in, talk about work, and then get out. And you don't really build that sense of team. So a kind of a theme in this conference is to start small and to iterate from there. And if you're working remote, if you're going remote, you won't get it right the first time. And that's okay, and it's fine. So start small and iterate. There's one company that said, okay, we're gonna try this remote working thing. So for 2 weeks, everybody can go wherever they want. So we'll try it. So everybody just spread out and go out into the world. So of course they did, and they went all over the world, and the team checked out, and it was a complete disaster, total failure. Nothing worked, of course. And I was like, yeah, I could have told you before your 2 weeks that this wasn't going to work, because there's so many things. When you go remote, the culture of your company changes. So there's all kinds of things to take into account. And so it failed, and sadly they decided that remote working was not for them. And I thought, oh, that's sad. You could start, by just having everybody log in from their own offices to a meeting. That would be a nice place, safe place to start, and you won't fail. Or just go work 1 day a week at home and see what happens, see what problems you run into. But don't just tell people to scatter. The pictures that you're seeing here is from the office of Jesse Fuel. He's an Agile coach in Florida or DC, I think DC. He started by going remote. He built an office in his attic. So he was in the attic, but the guy is a really tall guy. And he found that in the attic he was really cramped, and he was always like bumping his head, and then he had to go up and down these little stairs all day, and it just wasn't working. So then he thought, okay, I'm going to build the office in my bedroom, which is this one where you see here. So the bed's somewhere over here. And you can see he tried to make it look like an office. He has diplomas on the wall. And he's like, it was a little weird with the webcam in the bedroom, but I pointed it in a different direction. And he said, but then I found that I never left my room. Like all day and all night, I was always in my room. So that wasn't working for him. And then he discovered this thing called shed quarters. So it's this thing on the top, and it's like a prefabricated house that he could build himself. So he built himself a little tiny 2-by-3 meter office in the backyard. And that's his son checking it out. That's what it looks like when you're inside. So he actually has to leave the house every day and go to the backyard. But what he learned from this is that it was an iterative process. He had to try a bunch of different things that seemed very reasonable at the time, but didn't work for odd reasons. So never leaving your room. He was like, I used to have to go to the office, and I thought I was in prison by going to the office, but I just built my own prison in my own home. I thought, yeah, I'm going to see that. So start small, tiny steps. And then the last tip that I'll leave you with is get trained. I offer the Work Together Anywhere workshop, but there's lots of people offering workshops and trainings and stuff, and a lot has happened, and you can learn a lot about the tools and just find out what's out there by doing that. Don't just go at it alone. There's a lot happening. So definitely get some sort of training. And I think that's it. I don't know how far I am or how long the timer on here ran out, but okay, it's fine. So a few minutes. And that's it. That's all. I could go on all day, but we don't have all day. Questions?
When is your book out?
Yeah, when is my book out is the question. And within the next couple of months. Chapter 1 just went to the printer because I wanted to start small and iterate, of course. So I wanted to see, like, is it going to work? It's a super colorful, book with all. So I wanted to, I'm printing chapter 1, and that'll go to all the people who have pre-ordered the book. And yeah, after that, it should be 2 to 3 more months. Yeah. Thanks for asking. People have been asking for the last year. I'm like, oh, it's so hard. Don't ever write a book.
Do you know any good tool for remote pair programming?
Do you mean for the actual programming or for, no, for the actual programming, I'm not sure. I'm not a developer at all. I think you guys are magical creatures. As I listen to some of the talks, I think, oh man. No, but I mean, in terms of video, I would use Hangouts or Squiggle.
No, that's the only stumbling block that I'm having at the moment.
Is actually a tool for pair programming. That probably could be answered by somebody here better. Yeah, that I don't know. I don't program. I wrote a book a couple of years ago with a woman who lives in California, and I was in the Netherlands, and we would just get on every day and just start 5 minutes on Skype with video, just check in, say hi, how are you, how's the day? And then we would move off and just take a Google Doc between us. And it took us about a year, but we wrote the book just using a Google Doc like that. I mean, that's totally different than pair programming. I'm not a magical creature as you. But, it's a really powerful way of working, actually.
You mentioned dealing with work-life balance and trying to work-life integration and all of that. But over the last 10 years, we've had a team of 30 or 40 people working remote. Starting to see a lot of complaints especially from wives and girlfriends and kids. People saying, now you're taking your work home, and there's been this new kind of desire to have more work-life balance and boundaries. We've been kind of struggling with that. So how do you deal with when your work is at home, keeping it from taking over your whole life?
Yeah, it's super hard. My husband's in the back, and he's like, yeah, how do you do it? Because I want her to stop working. People really struggle with this, and it's funny because managers always say, I don't want my team to go remote because they're not going to work. I know they're not going to work. They're going to sit on the couch. But actually what's happened is remote workers, they can't stop because the people that are working remotely are generally tending to work on stuff that they love, and so that's really hard to stop. And what I have to say is you have to put personal boundaries in place for yourself, and you have to stick to those. So you have to say, okay, at 8 p.m., the electronics go off, and you have to actually keep them off. But I really think, there's nothing a company can do to enforce that, I think. You're at home, and I think increasingly as we go, as work-life integrates, and it is going to integrate, it's becoming a blur, that it's an individual responsibility to keep those boundaries in place, because it's not healthy to work all the time. I did say that, Florian. It's not healthy to work all the time. But I think it's an individual responsibility to put those in place for yourself.
Who says you have to remote work from home?
Indeed. In fact, I think, and it's because I work from home that I say that, but indeed, you should work where you're most productive. If that's in the office, then you work in the office. And if that's, some people like to travel like the digital nomads. They really I can't do that. I get totally distracted and frazzled. But if they work better from the beach, then they work better from the beach. But you're right, it should be where you're most productive for the work that needs to be done. There's this great story. There's these twin brothers in Sweden, and they're creativity experts. And one guy, they're totally twins. In fact, the one guy's wife mixed him up with the brother at his wedding. That's how much they're alike. They're just very much alike. One guy likes to do his invoicing in a very beautiful place. He'll save it, and he'll go to the beach, and he'll do all of his invoices. They both hate invoicing. One guy will do all of his invoices in a very beautiful place, and the other brother locks himself in a basement without any windows so that he does the invoicing as fast as possible so that he can get out and work on the beach. So So it's whatever it is that you need to get your work done, you have to do that. Okay, I think that's it. Let's go get some coffee. Yeah.